Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Jacinta. If this is your first time here, thank you for stopping by. In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you guys how to cut and sew this overlap pinafore dress. If it's what you love to learn, kindly watch till the end. And if you're not subscribed, please hit on the subscribe button below and also turn on the notification bell so you get notified whenever I upload a new video. So without wasting much time, let's get started with the tutorial. This is the fabric I'll be using for this tutorial. It is called a check fabric. I'm making use of 2 yards. Starting off with the upper part, I'll fold my fabric into two. I'll arrange and pin it down to avoid shifting. Placing my tape on the tip of my fabric here, I'm going to measure downwards to my bust point, which is 10 inches. I'll make a mark there and I'll also mark 16 inches, which is my half length plus half inch. And my half length is 15.5 plus half inch is 16 inches. So I'll mark 16 inches also and square across the two lines. On the starting point of the fabric, that is where I started the measurement from, I'm going to mark half of my shoulder measurement, which is 8 inches, and also I'm going to come in by 3.5 inches for the neck width, and on the point where I mark the shoulder measurement, I'll come downwards by 1.5 inch for the shoulder slope. From that shoulder slope, I will mark 7.5 inches downwards for the armhole level. I'll connect from the 1.5 shoulder slope to the 7.5 inches armhole level with a straight line. On the points where the armhole level ended, I'm going to extend the line outwards and that becomes my chest line. I'll find the midpoint of this straight line and on that midpoint, I'm going to mark half inch inwards. Then on the chest line, I'm going to mark quarter of my bust circumference. That is my bust circumference divided by 4. I'm going to mark that on the chest line. I'll also add the sewing allowance. I'll add sewing allowance of 1.5 inch. Then I'm going to use my armhole cup to connect from the shoulder slope to the half inch I mark inwards to part of my bust circumference that I marked on the chest line, and that will form my armhole curve. What I'm going to do now is to mark my neck depth. I'm going to mark 3 inches downwards and connect with a curve to make the 3.5 inches neck width. On the bust line, I will mark quarter of my bust circumference and I'll add extra 1.5 inch for sewing allowance. On my waistline, I will mark 4 inches inwards. That is half of my nipple to nipple measurement. And I'm also going to mark half inches inwards on my bust line. I'll connect with a straight line. Then on the half length, I'll come in by half inch on both sides of the dart line and connect it to the half inch I marked on the bust line. On the half length, I will mark quarter of my waist circumference and I will also add 1.5 inch for sewing allowance and 1 inch for the dart I marked. Then connect it to the bust line. I will also connect the shoulder slope. I forgot to do that. Then go ahead and cut this out. For the upper part back of this dress, I'll fold my fabric into two and place this front piece on it. I'm going to have some space left at the center back. You can see the space I left for the zip at the center back. I'll carefully pin it to avoid shifting. For the back neck depth, I'm going to mark 1 inch downwards and connect with a curve to meet the front neck width. Then for the zip allowance, I'll mark 1 inch on the shoulder line and on the waistline, I'll mark half inch. I marked half inch to avoid zipper bulge. I'll add the remaining half inch by the side. So I'll connect it and cut it out. I was done cutting. I'm going to notch the dart line, trace it at the back, and I'm going to extend the back dart upwards by 2 inches. You measure what you have as your dart length. If it is 5 inches, then the back dart is going to be 2 inches longer. I'll remove my pins and set the back piece aside. I'll fold my fabric into two and place the front piece on it, and I'm going to cut exactly the way it is. You're not adding or removing anything. You're going to cut it exactly the way the front piece is. So you're going to have 2 pieces of the front. I was done cutting and I'm also going to notch the dart line of the second front piece. I'll open up the 2 front piece and place it front facing front. Make sure that it aligns on every side. I'll place my ruler on one shoulder like this. With a slanted line, I will connect it to meet the half length like this. After connecting it, I will cut it out. After cutting it, I'm going to place it like this. As you can see, the wrap is visible now. I was done cutting the front part. What I'm going to do now is to cut the skirt part of this dress. Before then, I'm going to cut the lining for each of these upper part piece. I'm using the fabric as the lining. So I'll do that off camera and be back. I'll fold my fabric into two and determine the wideness. For me, I divided my hip circumference by 4 and added the extra 5 inches. I'll get the full length of this skirt part. I minused my half length from the dress full length, and also I added extra inches at the hem for folding and half inch on the upper part for joining of the half length. I'll mark the full length and square across. I'll be using this part as the waistline. From the waistline, I'm going to mark 9 inches downwards for the hip line and I'll square across. So guys, I made a mistake. What you will do is on this center part, you're going to mark 1 inch. This 1 inch is for the slit at the front. You're going to take your measurements from that 1 inch. All your measurement is going to be taken from that 1 inch. Please take note of that. On the waistline, I'm going to mark quarter of my waist circumference and I'll add extra 1.5 inch for sewing allowance and 1 inch for that. On the hip line, I will divide my hip circumference by 4 and mark whatever it gave me there. And I'm adding extra 1.5 inch for sewing allowance. Then on the full length, whatever measurements I have on the hip line, I'm going to minus ½ inch and mark on the hemline. I'm going to connect this with my ruler. This is when I realized that I didn't mark the 1 inch for the slit, so I had to mark it and then I replaced the 1 inch by the side and reconnected. After that, I went ahead to cut it out. I was done cutting the front skirt. For the back, I'll fold my fabric into two and place the front skirt on it. And I'm going to cut exactly as the front skirt. I'm not adding or removing anything. This is because the 1 inch allowance I added for the slit is going to be the 1 inch zip allowance for the back. So I'm going to cut exactly as it is. After cutting, I'm going to open up the center of both the front and the back piece. I'm also going to remove the dart at the front piece. I want the dart to be only at the back. So I'll mark 1 inch and reconnect to the hip line and cut it out. And I'm going to notch the dart line for the back piece. You can add lining to this skirt part if your fabric is light. Though I didn't add lining while I was sewing, but I later added when I discovered that the fabric was shredding. It was not so strong, so I had to add lining. I was done cutting. I'm at my machine now to start joining the pieces together. The first thing I'm going to do is to draw the dart line for the back piece. So at that point where you notch, they're going to mark 6 inches downwards for the dart. You're going to mark ½ inch on both sides of the dart line that you have drawn and connect it downwards just like the way you see me doing. For the fabric belt, I have cut a piece of fabric of 35 inches long and 4 inches wide. So what I'm going to do is to fold the fabric into two like this, and I'm going to find the midpoint. I will notch the center of this piece of fabric, and I'm going to sew from one end to the other end. Now on that center that I've notched, I'm going to mark 1 inch on both sides of the notch. Then take it over to my machine and sew from one end to the 1 inch and from that end to the other 1 inch. So I'll do this and show you guys what I'm trying to say. I'm also going to mark the dart of this front upper part. So placing my tape on that notch that I made for the dart, I'm going to mark 6 inches upwards and draw a straight line. I'll do this for both the lining and the main fabric, and I'm going to use ½ inch to sew the darts. For the back, I will do the same, but I will extend the dart upwards by 2 inches. I will mark the same measurement for the two back piece and the lining. After sewing the dart with ½ inch, I'm going to turn the neckline of the back with the lining using ½ inch. I'll do the same for the front piece. I'm going to place the line on the fabric front facing front and sew this slanted part using 1/2 inch. For the belt holder, I'm going to cut a piece of fabric of 24 inches long, and the width is 1.5 unfold. I'll fold it this way. I'll go over to my machine and sew it, but make sure that what you have left after sewing it is 0.75 inch. Now for the front pocket, I'm going to cut it on this black hairstay. I've folded the hairstay into two. I'm going to mark the wideness as 7 inches and the length is going to be 8 inches. I'll go ahead now and cut it out. After cutting it, I'm going to give it a little curve this way. You can leave yours the way it is. After curving, the length I have is 7.5 inches and the width is 6.5 inches. I'm going to get my fabric and place the two pocket pieces I've cut on it. While placing it, make sure that the side of the facing that has the gum is facing down, so that when you iron it, it's going to gum on the fabric. I'm going to add 1/2 inch round, and on the upper part I'll add 1 inch. So this is the piece of fabric I'll be using for the belt holder. Like I said, after sewing it, you're going to have 0.7 inches. So while sewing it, make sure that on the closed side, what you have is 0.75 or 0.5. You're going to use your hot iron to gum this hairstay pocket piece to your fabric. After gumming it, you're going to cut it out, and remember I said you're going to leave 1/2 inch on all the side, and on the upper part you're going to leave 1 inch. On this curved part, you're going to notch it so that you can be able to fold it in easily. Only on the curved part. If you don't do it this way, you're going to find it difficult folding the curved area. After notching, as you're folding the 1/2 inch in, you're going to use your iron to press it so that it will relax. After that, you are going to use your hemming gum to hold this 1/2 inch and the upper part too. I was done with that. I'm going to do exactly the same for the second pocket. I was done sewing the belt holder. I'm going to trim off this excess and turn the front side. I was done turning. I'm going to iron it now. I was not ironing it, as you can see. So what I'm going to do now is to cut it into smaller pieces. So depending on how wide your fabric belt is, mine is going to be 1.5 inch. So I'm going to cut this belt holder to 1/2 inch. So whatever the measurement of your belt is, you're going to add 1 inch. That 1 inch is for folding of the belt holder. I was done with that. What I'm going to do now is to join the two pockets to the down part. So I've gone ahead to join the front skirt using the 1 inch allowance we added. So what I'm going to do now is to place these pockets. Placing my tape on the waist of the skirt, I'm going to mark 2.5 inches downwards, and on the center I'm going to, that is where the joining is, I will mark 2 inches. That is where I'm going to place the pockets. So I'm going to place the pocket there and I'll pin it. I will mark the same measurement for the second pocket and also pin it down. Then go over to my machine and sew it round, leaving only the upper part of the pocket open. I was done sewing the dart and turning the neckline of the front and back, as you can see, and I've also joined the pockets to the skirt part, as you can see. What I'm going to do now is to mark the length of the front slits. I'll first of all mark out 2 inches because that is the allowance I added for the folding of the down part. Then from that 2 inches, I'll place my tape upwards and mark 7.5 inches. This is where the front opening is going to stop. Now for the upper part, I'm going to close the armhole of both the front and the back upper part space. I'll turn it to the wrong side and sew using 1/2 inch. So this is me turning to the wrong side of all the upper part space, both the front and back, so I can close the armhole. Then I'm going to trim it off and turn to the right side, then go over to my iron and iron it as well so that it will relax. So this is the front slit, the 7.5 inches we marked, The next thing I'm going to do now is to attach the belt holder. I'm going to place the belt holders on the skirt waistline at the dart area and pin it down. I'm going to place the belt holders on both the front and the back skirts. After pinning, I'll go over to my machine and secure each of them with a stitch. I was done stitching the belt holders. As you can see, what I'm going to do now is to join the upper part to the skirt parts of both the front and the back piece. For the front side, I'll first of all join the upper part front piece together. So just like the way you see me doing, go ahead and join the upper part front piece like that before joining to the skirt part. And the back part, you're going to join the upper part and the lower part together front facing front using half inch. And while joining, the belt holder is going to be on the skirt part. So you're going to place it this way and so using half inch. You're going to do this for the two back piece. I was on joining the back piece. I'm also going to join the front piece. I was not joining, so what I'm going to do now is to mark the second place I'll attach the belt holder, which is the upper part of this dress. So I'm going to mark 2 inches upwards from the half length and I'll fold the belt holder this way. So we have two ways of sewing this. Is either you stitch on top with a matching color thread, or you fold it like this and then you're going to sew inside. So just like the way you see me doing, you're going to sew inside and the thread will not be seen. So you see what I did, right? You're going to push it upwards and they're going to sew inside. So you can use either of the two methods. Your belt holder is going to come out very neat. After stitching it, this is what it looks like. What I'm going to do now is to cut the excess. I'm going to cut out the excess and then I'm going to give it a very good ironing so that it will relax. I'm going to do this for all the other belt holders. I was done stitching the belt holders, and as you can see, my fabric belt can easily pass through the fabric through the belt holder. What I'm going to do now is to attach the zip for the back using the 1 inch allowance we added. So I'm going to place the two back piece front facing front and I'm going to mark 1 inch. Now my zip is going to stop at 8 inches below the half length. The remaining part I'm going to close it down because it won't have slits at the back. The front already has slits, so I'll only attach the zip and join the shoulders using half inch. I'm also going to mark 1.5 inch on both sides of this dress. That was the sewing allowance we added while cutting. So I'm going to mark the allowance on both sides and I'll go to my machine and sew. I was on closing both sides. As you can see, what I'm going to do now is to attach the zip. I've marked where the zip is going to stop. I'll place it this way and go over to my machine and attach the zip. Then lastly, I'm going to fold the down part. So I added 2 inches while cutting for the folding of this down part. I'll mark 2 inches and fold it, and that will be all for the cutting and sewing of this dress. If you find this video helpful and you've learned something new, please hit on the subscribe button, drop your comments and tell me what you think about this dress in the comment section, and turn on your notification bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. It goes a long way to encourage me. Thanks for watching and see you guys in my next tutorial.